We've got Detroit heading to Green Bay for a tough divisional matchup as 1.5 point underdogs. The total for that game is set to 45 points, which is especially important because Sharp Football Analysis is running their yearly points promotion using promo code POINTS this week. You will get the percent discount equal to the total in this game. So if Detroit scores 30, Green Bay also scores 30, they tie, you get 60% off your Sharp Football Analysis subscription. So if you've been looking into getting into the betting realm, you've been doing pretty good in the DFS streets and want to put those ROIs to work, this is a good opportunity for you to use promo code BET or promo code POINTS to get the points equivalent discount to the total in this game. So without further ado, let's get into the slate. All right, so right here at the top, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Sun God, 11,600. The second or third highest projected player on the slate, depending on what projections you are looking at. He's also the most expensive by a pretty significant margin, 800 points or $800 more than Aaron Jones, who we're not certain is going to play yet. So, as much as I would love to stack Detroit in this one, um, as 1.5 point dogs on the road, it doesn't matter that much. Usually, if we have a 5 point spread, a 6 point spread, 7 point spread, especially for the team that's at home, we get a little bit of a hint from Vegas as to what direction we should build because usually the winning team is going to be in the optimal lineups. Usually, more often than not, I should say. So we don't really have that hint. It's pretty much a pick on Green Bay gets a little bit of a nod, probably because they're at home. Lambeau's a tough field to play at. So you can pretty much go in whatever direction you want. So that leads you down to the next section of the if then statement, and that the Green Bay Packers players project better at cheaper salaries, right? So we have 3 to 4 options that we really like to pair with Jordan Love as opposed to Jared Goff. We only have a couple. Don't really love the prices of any of them. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown right up there with the Jamar Chases of the world. Maybe not quite the Justin Jeffersons the way this year's been going, but he's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is great. And we compare those two in our flex because the Green Bay receivers that we like in this matchup are so cheap that we can play them at captain. And still fit in both quarterbacks and maybe an Amon-Ra St. Brown, depending on how low we are willing to go with our punt plays. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, while he's a fantastic play, he can definitely be played at captain 2 and 4x2s. If you want to play 4 Green Bay Packers and 2 Lions, you could play Amon-Ra St. Brown at captain, Jared Goff in the flex, and then 4 Packers. That's totally fine as well. But with the way the pricing is working out, it's going to be really tough to get to four Detroit Lions for me, as bad as that feels. So brings us into Aaron Jones, who's going to project similarly if we can get good news on his injury. So he's been out pretty much all season, maybe all season. It might have been in the preseason that he injured that hamstring. He's been out for quite some time, and he is looking like he might be trending towards playing. We have to pay attention to news on how much he's going to play. We have to pay attention to see if there's going to be any sort of snap count with him, which is going to lead us into a whole can of worms with A.J. Dillon in just a minute. But Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, both truly questionable for this one. It appears to me as of now that Aaron Jones is trending towards playing, while Christian Watson is trending towards sitting again. So that's how we're going to approach the slate. And we'll talk about a few things if either of those aren't true. Jared Goff at 10,400 is projecting pretty much the same as Jordan Love. And like I said, it's just going to be tougher to get to those Detroit stacks because their players are more expensive and they project for less. So when you get down to like the Josh Reynolds, you have two receivers for Green Bay that we prefer to play in that same price range for cheaper. So it just makes things really hard when Sam Laporta and Josh Reynolds are so expensive. So right into Jordan Love. I mean, pretty much all of our lineups will be predicated around Jordan Love specifically because all of his primary receivers, if Christian Watson is out, are affordable aside from Dobbs, who's 8,800, but with 12 targets last week and that trend looking to continue, we're perfectly fine paying 8,800 for that. I mean, you have to pay for someone, right? So Jordan Love is going to be a fantastic pairing with Romeo Dobbs. Both of them I'm comfortable with playing at captain, but that player right there in the middle of both of them is the one that I'm most excited about for this one. David Montgomery all but out. He's still got the questionable tag, but it doesn't appear as if he's going to be playing. We had Jahmyr Gibbs at 60% last week. 60% of the snap share. He had 17 carries, I think 2 targets, so not as much as you would like to see in the receiving game. But we are so excited about him based off of what we know he can do and not necessarily what he's done so far. And that's just because he's a rookie, fourth game into the year, right? So, I mean, we haven't got to see them fully unleash Jahmyr Gibbs, but we have seen the excitement of that draft day when they took him way too early for most people, but not for the Lions, right? So there is no doubt that Jahmyr Gibbs' coming out party is in the works. They've been dying for this day, so we just have to be a little bit early with it. 9,600 doesn't feel fantastic for what we've seen so far, but it feels amazing for what we will see, and probably see it as soon as this Thursday. So Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of that piece to the puzzle that we really need, because if we're going to fade Jared Goff in the passing game, basically because we're being forced to, then Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to be plenty active in this game. Like I said, 45-point over under, so it's not anything to scoff at. It's a decent game total. Someone has to produce some points. That brings us to Christian Watson, who we discussed was questionable. If he does play, 8,200 is a little high coming off that hamstring injury. Probably not going to get a full workload. We did see him come in last year off of injury and immediately get to work. I think 3 touchdowns in that first game. I also believe that was soft tissue, and so I guess he could make me eat my words, but it's just doesn't seem really necessary. Like for example, I think I'd still prefer Romeo Dobbs to Christian Watson in this game. Maybe not the rest of the season, but definitely in this game. If Christian Watson were active, what it will do is make it muddier at the wide receiver 3 position that we'll talk about in a little bit. Maybe even make it a little weird for Luke Musgrave, but we'll talk about the wide receiver 3 position when we get down to it. That's what's really going to get affected. Romeo Dobbs. Um, Fire him up either way for this slate. He fits with Jordan Love. He's plenty affordable. Lets you get to Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe lets you get to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe a little pricey for that. But Sam Laporta, yeah, 8,000, had his fantastic game. I think something like 7 catches and 74 yards and a touchdown, maybe 80 yards, something like that. And immediately DraftKings hikes that price. We know that he was going to be a fantastic receiving option. He finally had a good, well, not finally, I mean 3 weeks in, but he has his good game, his coming out party, and DraftKings just plucks our hopes and dreams of a big Detroit stack. So Sam Laporta at 8,000, while he is viable as similarly to how I mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown was viable. If you want to play, you're playing large field and you want to do a 4x2, but you still want to get to Goff, you're obviously going to want to stack Goff, at least single stack them, preferably double stack them. So you can throw Sam Laporta in there, save a ton of money. Sam Laporta's ceiling is not nearly as high as Amon-Ra St. Brown, so you get into a little difficulty there, but you've got to put together some gross lineups in large field tournaments, so don't be afraid to single stack Goff with Laporta in the flex, and then maybe do yourself a big Green Bay stack with your other 4 positions. A.J. Dillon's in a weird situation, so if Aaron Jones plays, it doesn't really matter that much for AJ Dillon's role, and that's because he failed to really grasp a larger workload with Aaron Jones out. He ended up only playing about 51% of the snaps, I believe it was, last week. So he was losing a lot of work to Patrick, which is kind of weird. And so, and also getting pulled in the goal line, also kind of weird. What are you doing with AJ Dillon if not to use him on the goal line? So I don't know that in any instance I am super thrilled for AJ Dillon. In the article, I'm teetering back and forth on him being tier 2 and tier 3. It's tough. That tier 2 is really really big for this one. There's a lot of guys on Green Bay that I like, but he's teetering on tier 2 just because I believe that his normal usage is going to have to be higher than it was last week. 11 touches for AJ Dillon on only 51% of the snaps. Maybe that's normal with Aaron Jones on a normal week, but the goal line work would probably need to be there. And then in addition to that, probably not going to get a full workload from Aaron Jones. So both of those guys are falling in the like tier 2 to tier 3 range and really waiting on news. But AJ Dillon, whether Aaron Jones plays or not, had a, a troublesome or a worrisome week 3 that we're not really sure how that's going to trend going forward. I don't foresee an event where AJ Dillon's the guy that you need to have at 7,000. I especially prefer to stack Jordan Love as heavily as possible. That's not because I really love Jordan Love or even love him in this game. It's just more so that he's going to be popular, and so everyone's going to want to stack Jordan Love, with two players. Two players on a running back feels really good. So if you can get 3 wide receivers with Jordan Love, you're going to differentiate yourself just a little bit. I always want to overstack. If I feel like a quarterback's going to be popular and I want to play them, then I'm going to overstack that quarterback. That's my way of getting to unique builds while still playing the quarterback that I want to play. Luke Musgrave's also a great way to get to those unique builds. If you want to throw Luke Musgrave in because he's 6,400, that's too expensive, especially since Jaden Reed is only 5,600. Um, you just can't really justify playing, um, you know, Luke Musgrave over Jaden Reed or even Wicks. It you can't really feel confident about playing Luke Musgrave at 6,400, except for to be unique. And so you can throw them in there for large field stuff, but we're really going to be concentrating on Wicks and on Jaden Reed. I'm just skipping Wick's first name because I don't want to butcher it for the man. So we've got Dontavian Wicks. Dontavian. All right, we're gonna get that right for the rest of the time. So Jaden Reed, 5,600, and Dontavian Wicks, 5,000. Those are going to be the two players that you're going to be concerned about when Christian Watson is active or inactive. If Christian Watson is inactive, I'll include both of them in all the lineups. If Christian Watson is active, that means one of those two gets pushed to the side. Dontavian Wicks is probably the one who gets pushed to the side for the simple fact that he wasn't here last year. Jaden Reed has some experience playing with, actually a lot of experience playing with Jordan Love, and Jaden Reed has generated offseason buzz multiple times. So he is probably the one who sticks in the starting lineup if I had to guess. And the 5,600 might make it even a little bit better because maybe a little bit more of the field goes with Dontavian Wicks at 5,000 to save the 600. So you pay up just a little bit, you get a little bit of a roster percentage discount, and that works out great. Hopefully now, obviously not hopefully for Christian Watson, but hopefully for our lineups. Christian Watson, takes another week to get healthy because we've really got a good shot at stacking Jordan Love pretty heavily for a very cheap price. You've got Khalif Raymond down there at 5,200, which reminds me that I skipped Josh Reynolds there at 6,200. So Josh Reynolds at 6,200 is just a little bit too pricey, especially since we're not really too worried about stacking the Detroit side. Just like we already talked about, they're far more expensive for similar projections. So if we're not too worried about stacking that side, you don't really need to get to Josh Reynolds at 6,200. He didn't even have a target last week, although he is playing over 70% of the snaps each of the first 3 weeks. We'll see if that continues when Jameson Williams gets back in 3 games. But nonetheless, it's just a little bit too expensive and doesn't really fit here, except once again, it seems like the Jared Goff single stack isn't what you love to do, but it's something that can work out on this slate because if it does go over, you're probably going to want to both quarterbacks. So the more contrarian you want to get, the further down you're going to go with your single stack. So if you want to play Josh Reynolds with just Jared Goff, that's totally fine. That lets you spend some more money on Green Bay. If it's a smaller field, you pair him with Amon-Ra St. Brown or even pair him with Jahmyr Gibbs and hope we see some of that receiving upside. Khalif Raymond at 5,200, I can't really justify when he's sandwiched right there between Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. So probably somebody that I'm going to omit entirely, unless it's large field. It's really hard to omit someone entirely in large field. We have Patrick Taylor at 3,000. He's obviously in play if Aaron Jones does not go. If he does go, then just X him off the board. But Craig Reynolds is someone who I want to talk about at 2,800 because he had very minimal usage last week. He played about 40% of the snaps, but he only had 4 carries. And I don't foresee Detroit doing that again. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get utilized more as a passer or as a passing pass catcher and a rusher. But they're not typically one to just let one running back run wild. So I do believe that we are going to see Craig Reynolds and Jahmyr Gibbs. And you compare the two of them because a lot of people will omit create a rule to omit lineups that have two running backs from the same team. So I wouldn't mind playing Jahmyr Gibbs at captain with Craig Reynolds and then stacking the rest with Packers as a kind of unique build. So let's go in and build some of these lineups that we were talking about. I love Jahmyr Gibbs at captain, but I'm going to start with Jordan Love because I think those are what we're going to touch on just a little bit more. So we'll start with Jordan Love at captain. And then we want to just start throwing these guys in there. So Romeo Doubs is probably going to be a staple of our lineups. And then let's go with Jaden Reed. And then Samori Toure, I forgot to discuss because he's way down here, but he will be the fourth receiver. And he's been plenty involved, I think around 30% of the snaps through the first 3 weeks with Christian Watson out. So that's another guy who's worthy of consideration if Christian Watson is out. And then that leaves us a ton of money, and we want to throw in Jahmyr Gibbs. So let's see how much money we have left. And then, bam, we sack Jared Goff. We still have 300 in salary. So Jordan Love at captain, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Samora Toure, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jared Goff. And this is exactly why, as much as I would love to be stacking the Detroit offense for what the ceiling they're capable of, this lineup feels so good and still leaves 300 on the table after we have one captain quarterback and another in the flex. Let's throw a Gibbs lineup together. So we'll start with Gibbs at captain, pair him with Goff, and then we're going to do a 3x3 here because I want to throw in Craig Reynolds. So we get down to him. And then this leaves us with adding Jordan Love, adding Romeo Doubs, and seeing what we have left. 3,800, probably not a kicker. Doesn't leave you with anything you feel great about. Packers are fine. Samora Toure actually works great. That leaves a ton of money, so you're going to take Reynolds out for that one. And then we get another receiver. So you could let's go Dontavian Wicks for this one, leave 1,000 on the table. So Jahmyr Gibbs, captain, Jared Goff, Dontavian Wicks, Jordan Love, Romeo Doubs, and Samora Toure. So that's a couple directions that you could go. We're going to try to stick to 3x3s, work fine, especially in these tough divisional matchups. Just try to get unique with how you build your 3x3s because that's what a lot of the field is going to feel comfy with. And then just a lot of 4x2s, just overstack Jordan Love. Lean into the Packers passing game, lean into the Lions rushing game, and that's probably how I would advise building this slate. So this has been Showdown coverage brought to you by SharpFootballAnalysis.com. Thank you all so much for coming out. We will catch y'all next week. Peace.